You've entered the archives of the forgotten. I'm Dr. Haunted. Tonight I'll show you what was never meant to be seen. Just remember, once you know the truth, you can't unsee it. Working the graveyard shift at WXKZ 103.7 FM was supposed to be simple. Play pre-programmed music, read the occasional weather update, and keep the dead air to a minimum. The overnight slot paid well because nobody wanted to sit alone in a radio station from midnight to 6 a.m. What they didn't tell me was that I wouldn't be alone. The station occupied the top floor of an old building downtown, with windows overlooking the empty streets below. My booth was soundproofed and isolated, connected to the outside world only through microphones and phone lines that rarely rang after 1 a.m. During my first month, everything was routine. I'd announce the songs, read pre-written sponsor messages, and occasionally take requests from insomniacs and night shift workers. The automated system handled most of the work while I caught up on reading or scrolled through social media. Then the calls started. It began with a woman's voice, always the same caller, always requesting songs from the 1950s. She had a peculiar way of speaking, formal, old-fashioned, like someone from another era. "Good evening, dear. Could you play In the Still of the Night by the Five Satins? It reminds me of dancing with my William." I'd search our database for older songs, usually finding what she requested. Her taste was impeccable. Classic doo-wop, early rock and roll, romantic ballads that painted pictures of sock hops and drive-in theatres. "Thank you, sweetheart," she'd say after each song. William and I appreciate it so much. After several weeks, I became curious about my regular caller. "What's your name?" I asked during one of her calls. "Dorothy, dear. Dorothy Hartwell. I've been listening to your show every night. How long have you been a fan of 1950s music?" Her laugh was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Oh, it's not nostalgia for me, sweetheart. It's my music. From when William and I were young and dancing at the Starlight Ballroom." Something about her response felt odd, but I couldn't place what bothered me. I started looking forward to Dorothy's calls. In the isolation of the overnight shift, she became my only regular human contact. One night, she sounded different, sadder, more distant. "Could you play Earth Angel tonight? It was our wedding song." "Of course, Dorothy. Big anniversary coming up." "In a way, dear. Tonight marks 60 years since the accident." The line went dead before I could ask what she meant. I played Earth Angel as requested, but couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. During the song, I researched Dorothy Hartwell online. What I found made my blood run cold. Dorothy Hartwell, age 23, and her husband William, age 25, had died in a car accident on their way home from the Starlight Ballroom on October 15th, 1963. They'd been married exactly 2 months. The newspaper article included a photo, a young couple in 1960s formal wear, Dorothy in a white dress with her hair in victory rolls, William in a dark suit with a thin tie. They were beautiful, radiant, frozen in time at the moment their lives ended. 60 years ago, tonight. The phone rang again at exactly 3 a.m. "Thank you for playing our song." Dorothy's voice was fainter now, like a radio signal from very far away. "William says it's time for us to go dancing again." "Dorothy, wait. Goodbye, dear. Thank you for keeping us company during the lonely hours. You have such a kind voice." The line went dead with a soft click that sounded final. I never heard from Dorothy again, but sometimes, during the deepest part of the night, I'll play those old songs anyway. In the Still of the Night, Earth Angel, Only You, hoping that somewhere Dorothy and William are dancing together to the music that connects the living and the dead. Some love stories don't end with death. they just change frequencies, broadcasting across the decades to anyone willing to listen in the dark. Lincoln Elementary School hired me as head custodian because I didn't mind working alone in empty buildings. After 20 years in maintenance, I'd learned that schools after hours were peaceful places, just hallways full of children's artwork and the lingering smell of cafeteria food. But some children never really go home. My routine was simple: secure the building after the last teacher left, clean the classrooms, mop the hallways, and ensure everything was ready for the next day. The job paid well and came with good benefits, perfect for someone nearing retirement. Room 14 was always my last stop. The second grade classroom sat at the end of the main hallway, and something about it felt different from the others. The temperature was consistently cooler, and my keys would sometimes stick in the lock as if the mechanism were resisting. Mrs. Henderson, who taught second grade, mentioned that her students often asked about the sad girl who sat in the back corner. When she'd look, the corner was empty, but the children insisted they could see someone there. A little girl with dark hair who never spoke or raised her hand. Kids have such active imaginations, Mrs. Henderson would laugh, but I noticed she avoided that corner of her classroom. During my third week, I encountered the girl myself. I was mopping room 14 around 9 p.m. when I heard soft crying coming from the reading corner. I looked up to see a small figure hunched over a picture book, a girl about 7 years old with long dark hair covering her face. "Hey there," I said gently. "What are you doing here so late?" She looked up, and I saw why the other children called her the sad girl. Her eyes held a depth of sorrow that no child should ever carry. She was translucent, like looking through frosted glass, but her pain was absolutely real. "I can't find my mummy," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Emma Rodriguez." I knelt down to her level. "When did you last see your mummy?" "She dropped me off for school, but she never came back. Mrs. Johnson said she would, but she never came back." Something cold settled in my stomach. Mrs. Johnson had been the second grade teacher 30 years ago, long before Mrs. Henderson. The next day, I researched Emma Rodriguez in the school's old records. What I found broke my heart. Emma Rodriguez, age 7, had been a student at Lincoln Elementary in 1994. On March 15th of that year, her mother had dropped her off for school, but never returned to pick her up. Maria Rodriguez had been killed in a car accident that afternoon, and Emma had waited in the classroom until a social worker arrived to tell her she was now an orphan. Emma had died 3 months later in foster care, officially from pneumonia, but the case notes suggested a little girl who had simply given up hope. She'd been waiting in room 14 for 29 years, still believing her mother would come back. That night, I brought a small chair and sat with Emma in the reading corner. She showed me her favorite book, a story about a little bird looking for its mother. "She's probably stuck in traffic," Emma said hopefully. "Sometimes the cars get really busy." I spent every evening with Emma after that. We'd read books together, and I'd tell her stories about all the children who had learned and played in her classroom over the years. She seemed less sad when she had company, but I knew what I had to do. I researched Maria Rodriguez's grave and found she was buried at Restwood Cemetery, just 10 minutes from the school. On a Friday evening, I gently took Emma's small, cold hand. "Emma, I think I know where your mummy is. Would you like me to take you to her?" Her face lit up with the first real smile I'd seen from her. "She's waiting for me?" "She's been waiting for you for a very long time." We walked together through the empty school hallways, Emma's hand growing warmer in mine. At the cemetery, I led her to her mother's grave, a simple headstone with both their names, as Maria had been buried with the space reserved for her daughter. Emma ran to the gravestone and knelt beside it. "Mommy, I knew you'd wait for me." The air shimmered, and I saw another figure appear. a young woman with Emma's dark hair, kneeling with her arms open wide. "I'm sorry I was late, Mija," Maria whispered. "I'm so sorry." Emma ran into her mother's embrace, and both figures began to fade, becoming translucent, then transparent, then gone entirely. But in that final moment, I heard something beautiful, the laughter of a child who was no longer sad. Room 14 feels different now, warmer. Mrs. Henderson says her students don't ask about the sad girl anymore, and sometimes she catches glimpses of two figures walking hand in hand past her window, a mother and daughter finally going home together. Some children just need someone to help them find their way back to the people who love them, even if that journey crosses the boundary between life and death. The Silver Moon Diner was the kind of place that attracted night owls, truckers, insomniacs, hospital workers getting off late shifts. Open 24 hours, it served passable coffee and decent pie to anyone who needed a warm place to sit during the dark hours. I took the overnight waitressing job because I needed the money and didn't mind the solitude. Most nights were quiet, with maybe a dozen customers between midnight and dawn. What I didn't expect was the regular at booth 7 who only ordered coffee and never aged a day. He appeared every night at exactly 1:47 a.m., a man in his 30s wearing a grey wool coat that looked expensive but old-fashioned. He'd sit in the corner booth, order black coffee and read a newspaper while chain-smoking unfiltered cigarettes. "Just coffee tonight, Frank?" I'd ask, though he never told me his name. "Just coffee, sweetheart. Keep it coming." His routine never varied. He'd sit for exactly 2 hours reading his paper and drinking coffee, leaving a $5 tip on a $2 tab. At 3:47 a.m., he'd fold his newspaper, stub out his cigarette, and walk out into the night. After a month of serving him, I became curious about my mysterious regular customer. The newspaper he read looked vintage. The fonts were old-fashioned, and I'd catch glimpses of advertisements for products that hadn't existed in decades. "What paper is that?" I asked one night while refilling his cup. "The Evening Herald," he replied without looking up. "Always liked their sports section." I'd never heard of the Evening Herald, but figured it might be from another city. The night everything changed was during a severe snowstorm. The roads were nearly impassable and the diner was empty except for me and the cook. At 1:47 a.m, Frank appeared in booth 7 as always, his grey coat dusted with snow, but there were no footprints leading to the door, and I hadn't heard the bell chime when he entered. I brought his coffee, my hands shaking slightly. "Nasty night out there. Reminds me of the night I died," he said casually, turning a page of his newspaper. I nearly dropped the coffee pot. "Excuse me?" He looked up for the first time in all the nights I'd served him. His eyes were kind, but infinitely sad. December 15th, 1987. Car skidded on ice right outside this diner. Broke my neck on impact. I stared at him, speechless. I was on my way to propose to Linda, he continued, pulling a small velvet box from his coat pocket. Had the ring and everything. Never got the chance. "But you're here. You're talking to me. I've been coming here every night for 36 years, reading the paper, drinking coffee, working up the courage to cross over. But I can't leave without knowing Linda got the message." Frank opened his newspaper and showed me the front page. The Evening Herald, December 16, 1987. The headline read, "Local man dies in car accident." The article was about him. Frank Morrison, age 31, killed when his car hit black ice outside the Silver Moon Diner, survived by his girlfriend, Linda Walsh, who had been expecting his proposal that evening. "What message?" I whispered. Frank handed me the engagement ring. It was beautiful, a simple solitaire that caught the diner's fluorescent lights like captured starlight. "Tell her I was coming. Tell her I had the ring. Tell her I loved her enough to want forever." Frank, that was 36 years ago. She might be. She's still alive, still lives on Maple Street, 3 blocks from where we used to dance. I check on her sometimes, make sure she's okay. The next day I looked up Linda Walsh in the phone book. There she was, Linda Morrison now, married to someone else, but I could see in the online photos that she'd kept Frank's last name as her middle name. I called her, my heart pounding. "Mrs. Morrison? This is going to sound strange, but I have a message from Frank." The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. "Where did you get his ring?" she whispered finally. I told her everything, the diner, booth 7, the nightly visits. When I finished, she was crying. I knew he was coming to propose that night. I had my answer ready. It was yes. It was always yes. I've been waiting 36 years to tell him. That night, Linda came to the diner. She was in her 60s now, silver-haired but still beautiful, still carrying the same sadness in her eyes that Frank carried in his. At 1:47 a.m., Frank appeared in booth 7. When he saw Linda, his face transformed with joy and relief. "I was coming to propose," he said, holding out the ring. "I'm sorry I was late." "Yes," Linda whispered, taking the ring with trembling fingers. "I would have said yes." Frank stood up, looking more solid than I'd ever seen him. He walked to Linda, took her hands, and for a moment, they were young again. 2 people in love, finally able to say goodbye properly. "I'll wait for you," he promised. "Don't wait too long," she replied, touching his face. "I've got some living left to do." Frank smiled, kissed her forehead, and faded away like smoke dispersing. Linda comes to the diner sometimes now, always sitting in booth 7, drinking coffee and reading the paper. She wears Frank's ring and a chain around her neck and seems lighter somehow, as if a weight she'd carried for decades has finally been lifted. Some love stories don't end with death. They just pause until both hearts are ready to let go. That concludes tonight's case. But the shadows don't sleep. I'm Dr. Haunted. Until next time, keep your doors locked, your lights low, and your nightmares closer.